Hello and welcome to this week's session on the medical debate where we will be talking about aging and theorized prevention of said aging. So this is one of the theories of why we age and it's called telomere shortening. Telomeres are little proteins which are on the edge of your chromosomes, and DNA is associated with histones, which are types of proteins, very tightly and coiled up, supercoiled, and this makes up chromosomes. And each section of DNA on a chromosome is called a gene. These telomeres contain DNA genome, which is not being used in cell replication, and every time DNA replication happens, this telomere shortens. The telomeres last for about roughly 50 replications, and the telomeres regenerate at a very slow speed. So, in the term of the lifespan of a human, they barely regenerate at all. And therefore, when they shorten, it's very difficult for cells to replicate, which means tissue regeneration, muscle regeneration, and just cell replication becomes a lot harder. And that's how your body just becomes less able to fight infections and repair tissue which has been damaged in young age.
So next we're going to talk about autoimmunity. Sometimes as we age, the immune system can launch unnecessary autoimmune responses and begin to destroy the body itself, so actual body cells and not viruses or bacterial cells which are infecting or invading the body. And this is particularly possible in the lungs, which can result in sped up aging and potentially even death. Next, we're going to talk about a process called DNA methylation, and as we get older, this process slows down. DNA methylation involves the addition of a methyl group, which is a carbon and 3 hydrogen atoms, to an area of the DNA molecule which turns off the gene, and this is how cell differentiation happens. As we get older, this slows down, so it acts as a biomarker. We can estimate someone's age by looking at the methylation that has happened in their bodies.
The last factor as to why we age, which we will be talking about at the medical debate in this presentation, is external environmental factors. There are quite a few obvious ones which you can see on older people, for example, wrinkling. So wrinkling happens when you have extended exposure from the sun, and it happens because when you're older, the production of collagen in your skin decreases, and after the age of 20, the production of collagen decreases by 1% every single year. The lack of production of collagen results in your skin becoming very brittle, which means wrinkles are more likely to form. Not only this, but free radicals in the atmosphere can actually react with our healthy cells, damaging them. And free radicals are particles with one electron attached to them, so they are very reactive. Now we will be talking about research into stopping or reversing aging by a scientist named Mr. George Church. So one tool that is used in gene editing is something called CRISPR. CRISPR is a tool used by computers to insert a different type of RNA into a certain DNA genome or sequence, or to snip out an area of unwanted DNA genome or sequence from a subject when scientists think it might be positive. And therefore, George Church, the scientist we mentioned earlier, is thinking of using the gene editing software to increase the frequency of supposedly beneficial genes. And as you can see at the bottom of the slide, it says some of these genes are MSTN, LRP, APOE, which may lead to the reduced likelihood of degeneration, osteoporosis, and dementia. Removing these genes can make us less susceptible to disease, he believes, and therefore he also believes that this technology could be used for mental enhancement. Now, although there are positives to the fact that if we increase the frequency of beneficial genes, what potential ethical problems can lie in this? I'd like you to take a minute to pause the video at this point and just think about this and what could be the potential negatives of being able to enhance people's mental abilities or even just change them using computers. Sort of think along the lines of autonomy, beneficence, and what uses this could be put to. As aspiring medical students, it's important to always be keeping up to date with your research, and one particular research project you can undertake is something called reversing aging in dogs, and this is being researched into by a company called Rejuvenate Bio, and this could definitely be an interesting topic of research for potential medical students. One type of drug which scientist George Church was talking about are senolytics. These are drugs which destroy senescent cells, and we will define what senescent cells are now. Cells can either go apoptosis, which is controlled cell death when damaged, or they can remain senescent and not replicate. These senescent cells can remain in the blood or remain where they are and send messages to the body to signal the fact that there is something wrong, for the body to launch an appropriate response, and then possibly be destroyed later on after they've sent this message. However, if these cells remain for too long, then this can lead to organ damage and long-term inflammation. Not only this, but it's actually shown that senescent cells can cause age-related diseases and increase their frequency or likelihood, like type 2 diabetes, cancer, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's. Senolytics try to destroy these senescent cells so that this type of age-related disease and these types will not increase, or the frequency and likelihood of them will not increase.
Next, we're going to talk about senomodifiers, and these are drugs which can cause senescent cells to duplicate again. Studies have shown that these can be found in grape skin, and in experiments, this has improved the lifespan of yeast by 50%. It may be beneficial to also begin colic restriction to minimize aging processes. We're now going to discuss the first ethical issue. Why might it be impractical and unethical to extend human life? Feel free to pause the video at this point and have a think yourself. So hopefully you've had a chance to think about this question. Some possible answers could include the economic cost of extending human life. First of all, more humans on the planet due to humans living to an older age would take up valuable resources including houses, food, and water. Additionally, the process itself could be very costly, and it could mean that more money is being spent on extending human life than on other areas of medicine, such as new innovations for diseases that already exist. Furthermore, this might lead to discrimination. If only wealthier people in wealthier countries are able to afford the ability to extend their own life, this could mean that people in these countries are living for longer, whereas people in poorer countries and developing countries are not. This also conflicts the pillar of autonomy. If the editing to extend a human life, particularly gene editing, is done at a young age or at birth or even before birth, then the host or the person who this is being done to might not have a say in what's happening to them, and therefore they're not able to express their own autonomy as to whether they want to extend their life or not. There may be an aspect of non-maleficence affected as well. This is still a very new treatment, and there is not much known about the long-term effects of extending human life or any of the treatments that we've mentioned before. Therefore, there might be a risk posed to certain people, and there may be other side effects as well, which obviously impacts a person's well-being. Overall, this could lead to discrimination between people who have extended their lives and those who haven't. And this is one of the major moral and ethical dilemmas of extending human life. This brings us on to our second ethical issue. If CRISPR can be used to enhance mental abilities, could it be used unethically? Pause the video at this point and have a think yourself. Hopefully you've had a chance to think about this question. First of all, CRISPR could lead to discrimination, as we mentioned in the previous ethical issue. Wealthier people will be able to afford this treatment, and hence them and their children will be able to become smarter and will be able to learn languages, be able to comprehend certain questions, and think more efficiently than people without these enhanced mental abilities. Therefore, they will be able to become wealthier themselves and get a better job, and this will lead to a cycle of wealthy people who are able to afford this procedure to become wealthier, whereas poorer people will remain poorer. And this can strengthen the divide that exists globally between developing countries and those countries which are already developed. This could also lead down an avenue of eugenics. It is selecting people who are better or who have enhanced genes who are then superior to other people. And this goes against the whole point of humanity, to celebrate people's diversity and people's different abilities and mental skills. This could also mean that certain people are more valued than others in the workforce. This also goes against the pillar of autonomy. If governments start using this procedure to train people to become soldiers or academics or scientists or researchers from a very young age, this goes against people's free will and choice to go into whichever profession or route they want to in life. Furthermore, as with the previous ethical issue, this is a very new treatment. There could be side effects that people aren't aware of, and therefore this also conflicts the pillar of non-maleficence, since this could harm someone's well-being. There are a variety of ethical issues surrounding CRISPR, which is why it's very controversial today, despite the obvious advantages that it could also provide, including people becoming smarter and humanity as a whole being able to progress better and quicker. That brings us to the end of the session today. Thank you very much for listening, and we hope to see you again next week for another session. If you have any questions, please email themedicaldebate@gmail.com or DM us on our Instagram, themedicaldebate. We'd be happy to discuss any of the topics that we've had sessions on with you, and also to answer any questions that you may have. Please do follow us on Instagram to keep up to date with all our upcoming sessions and our guest speakers in the future. See you again soon.